Hey guys, it's Wren again. So this is a little early because I'm being a good kid today and making a video while there's still daylight out, for one. Not for long. But today we're going to talk about persecutors and persecutor altars, what they do, the kinds of persecutors that there are, and some ways to deal with them. So, persecutor altars are altars that harm the system in some form or fashion. Usually they like to do this. Usually they're harming other altars. Sometimes they're harming the body. Sometimes they like to harm the body or the altar. Sometimes they don't really recognize that they are also harming themselves in the process of harming other altars or harming the body in effort to harm the system. Other times they do know, but they don't care at all. So for us, we have a lot of altars, yes, we do have a lot of altars, but we have two persecutor altars that we are aware of. Keep that in mind. Aware of. And both of them are the type of persecutor that they intentionally harm the system, and they don't care that they are hurting themselves in the process. These kind of persecutor altars I consider to be interjective abusers and stuff like that. So they're fully aware that they are in the system, that they are hurting other altars and in the process hurting themselves. They just do not care. And they're very manipulative and let's say calculated. I'm going to say calculated. Other types of persecutors are not so much in the same boat. Other systems have persecutors that don't know that they're actively harming themselves as much as they are harming other altars. They are not able to sort of recognize the trauma that they are flooding other altars with is also their trauma. And usually by explaining to them this, that you know, they're in the system too, they're feeling all this stuff too, they usually come around and they're like, oh, well, I don't have to be a jerk all the time. I don't have to actively hurt people because I'm hurting myself and I like myself more than I like other people. So if I hurt other people, then I'm just hurting myself too, and that sucks. Why would I do that? That's dumb. Other persecutor altars, like I said, already know this. They just don't care, or they don't seem to care. And so any pain or manipulation or trauma, flooding, flashbacks, abuse that they cause within the system is purely for their own, like, enjoyment, I'd say. Not necessarily enjoyment, but they're so, I guess, set in their ways that they just do not give a shit that they're hurting themselves in the process. That, or they're just so disconnected from the fact that they are hurting themselves that they're like sadistically enjoying the fact that they're hurting themselves and other altars in the process. From my experience, persecutor altars are very hard to deal with. They are not easy. Talking to them is a pain in the ass. Mostly because the persecutors that we deal with think, well, they are very smart. They're very smart, very calculated. They have specific motives, and it usually involves control. They want to control the system. They want to control the altars. They want to make sure that everything that sucks is continuing to suck. And it sucks. For us, the way that we dealt with this is basically by not letting them front nearly as much, giving them another altar that is usually much stronger than the rest of us. They're not really specialized, but they know how to deal with a persecutor, and they know how to basically stop them in their tracks. We call them keepers. One of our keeper altars, well, really the only one that I'm aware of, her name is Rosabelle. She's a vampire. She's like 800 years old. She's really cool. Total badass. She is Fear's keeper. Now, this happened before I was around, but when Fear first started existing, well, not really existing, but when he started coming around and really screwing with Destiny, there was no buffer. There was nothing to stop him, and it was a very unpleasant time. And so eventually Rosabelle came around and was like, you know what, screw this crap. I'm taking you with me, and I'm going to take you down to hell. And you're just going to hang out with me. Now, her job is to keep Fear. Keep him from fronting, keep him from hurting other altars. And she literally keeps him in a little ball, and so that he can't hurt anybody, because he doesn't care that he hurts anybody. He doesn't care that he's hurting himself in the process. He doesn't care that other people are trying to stop him. He literally takes joy and is excited when people do try to stop him, or try and tell him, you know, all the things that, like, he says to other people. And so really the only way that we could figure out how to stop him was to get him another altar who can basically deal with all his bullshit without breaking down and being manipulated by him as well. And it wasn't really that case with the controller, which is the other persecutor. He got cut in half because Reaper got mad at him. And he's not gone. He wasn't integrated. He wasn't really fragmented. I think he might have been fragmented, but he wasn't integrated for sure. But yeah. So what exactly is the point of a persecutor altar? Well, I'm going to say there's 2 points. Point number 1, and the most basic understanding of what a persecutor is an altar that takes after an abuser or a perpetrator to in order to protect the system. Basically, their form of protection is by constantly creating a state of hypervigilance. So in states in a physical state of rest, whereas, like, say your system is not in an actual stressful situation, a persecutor will come up and be like, hey, let me just screw things up real quick, make it very hard for you to function, because we don't want you to be getting lazy, basically. They don't they're like a fail-safe to becoming sedentary, in a sense. So for a lot of systems, persecutor altars will come around whenever there is no discernible stressful situation. And that generally happens with system communication in the first place. Like, when there is a stressful situation, a lot of the system gets shut down, more or less, and amnesic barriers come right back up, and the system goes into its general functionality. But when there's no like specific stressor in your life, like, say life is just going normally as it is, like nothing particularly stressful is happening, you're like financially you're good, relationship wise you're comfortable, all that sort of stuff, a persecutor may incite stress within the system in order to maintain that hypervigilance. And they do this usually by flooding. Flooding is more or less when another alter who has memories shares those memories with another alter, with you or another alter, forcefully. They don't do it with your permission. They're just like, here, have these and suffer. And persecutors tend to do this because it's the fastest way to maintain hypervigilance in a sedentary state. And as convoluted as it is technically a way of protection. It is a form of protection. They're trying, in essence, whether they know it or not, they are trying to protect the system by maintaining this state of constant stress. Because if you're constantly stressed, then the functioning of the system maintains itself, and the way that your system originally functioned is continued throughout your life. And it can be very hard for people, especially people in therapy, because you're trying to get to a point where you're healed, you're comfortable with your trauma and your alters and your system. And I'm going to resituate real quick. You're trying to get to a comfortable state, and your persecutors are like, no, we can't do that. You don't want to be comfortable. You don't want to be sedentary, because then you won't be prepared. You won't be prepared for it dropped focus. You want to be prepared for the inevitable suffering that may or may not come. And that's kind of the whole point of a persecutor alter. The other point is, and this is particularly for programmed or highly structured polyfragmented systems that have experienced SRA, ritual abuse of that sort. Some programs involve persecutors that their job is both to maintain that state of hypervigilance, but also to cause destruction within the system. It's kind of like I'm not going to say fail-safe, but that's like the closest thing that I can come to, like in my brain. But it's like one of the many efforts that an abuser or perpetrator that is also a programmer will go to in order to prevent other people or prevent their victim or survivor from finding out what exactly they did, who they are, all the information about the system and the abuse that they have endured. So they will have a persecutor alter who is more or less an introject of themselves coming in and fucking shit up for everybody in order to dismantle the functionality of the system. So a really great example of that is Ez and his feral issue. So we're going to go into detail on that. Yay! Okay, so the reason that the controller went after fear, I just totally got confused there for a second. Okay, let's start that over. The reason that controller went after Ez is because Ez is particularly a powerful alter. He has a lot of abilities that a lot of the other alters don't have. He can front whenever he likes because he's a manager. And he has co-consciousness with a lot of different people, especially myself and Destiny, Marie, alters that are not traumagenic, or not trauma alters. Words are hard for me right now. That usually present as the most like a normal, as opposed to, say, a trauma alter. So the whole point of the controller going after Ez was because he wanted to dismantle our main basis of communication and cooperation within the system, because Ez talks to all of the managers, and that means Psyche, who is able to control who fronts when, aside from, the managers, Toho, who controls our system shutdowns and our co-consciousness, Anon, Reaper, myself, Marie, Destiny, a lot of the trauma alters, organizers like Jason and Jody, littles like AC or Pickles and Peanut and all them. Ez has immediate communication with any of those alters, and he's also able to front whenever he likes. And by forcing Ez into a state where he is not able to function and appear as a more or less sane looking person, detrimentally impacts our system's general functionality, especially because we are not immediately able to control Ez's fronting ability, especially when it first started out, when Ez was triggered with these really terrible memories and that he doesn't know how to deal with. He would immediately start fronting and going into his feral state, and you don't think it'd be hard, but it's really hard to prevent an alter who is already able to front whenever they like from fronting. You have to fight very hard and for a very long time, and it's exhausting. I'm gonna tell you that. So, Controller knew who he wanted to go after and why he wanted to go after them. He wanted to go after Ez because Ez already had insecurities regarding his identity, because he's a demon, and he's insecure in the fact that he used to be a persecutor himself, but then he became a protector, and so he was insecure in his ability to protect other alters. So he went after him for his insecurities. He went after him because he was a demon. He went after him because he was not a trauma alter, and that is a really big aspect of it, because Ez is not built to have trauma memories. He wasn't created with them, and he wasn't created to deal with them. There is a distinct difference between a trauma alter and an alter who is not a trauma alter. The way that they deal with trauma is completely different. I mean, it's like waking up and having like your entire room caught on fire, and one of you has had your room caught on fire every day that you wake up, and the other one has never had their room caught on fire when they wake up in the morning. It's like that. So Ez is completely and utterly unprepared for the intense and terrible trauma that he was suddenly having thrust on him, and thus he was unable to function because one, he's not a trauma alter. Two, the trauma that he was forced to remember is very bad. And three, the alter that he was integrated with is a feral alter, which in and of itself is very hard to, it's very hard to control a feral alter as they are. So it's there's a cat here. He's coming up. He's coming up. He's going. There he goes. He's still going. You good? He's hanging out of the window. Where was I? So, everything that the controller did was very calculated. He did it not because, he wanted to protect the system. He wanted to actively destroy it, because that was his purpose. That was his programming. That's his job. And he takes joy in that. Whether or not he's supposed to, or if he genuinely takes joy in that, I have no idea. But that is, that's one type of Persecutor alter, and that's particularly the kind that we have, is the kind that want to fuck shit up for everybody because, you know, we can't have nice things here. Not in this system. So how do I deal with, well, not me personally, but how do we deal with persecutor alters? Well, like I said earlier, we mostly prevent them from fronting. We try to get somebody who is able to deal with their crap and in stride, more or less, to constantly be around them, to prevent them from, you know, doing harm to the body, to other alters, for detrimentally impacting our system and its general functionality. The way we do that is by analyzing the crap out of them. Alters, everybody in a system has quirks. They have, I'm not going to say quirks. Well, I am going to say quirks because they are kind of quirks. Not like, you know, generalized quirks, but would you calm yourself, cat? Find a place and stay there. But, sorry, I'm changing hands. Every alter has a way that they show what bothers them, in a sense, just like every person in the world does. The way that you react to things, to statements, to actions, to, you know, insignificant little eye twitches or whatnot, that is an example of whether or not something is getting to you, basically. So what we do is we analyze, we talk shit to our persecutors. So they usually talk shit to us, usually in very manipulative ways, very sinister, dark conversation, trying to get at your, like, you know, weaknesses and whatnot. We do the exact same thing, and we keep doing it and keep doing it until we find something that is getting a reaction out of them. It could be very small, very tiny little reaction. It could be, you know, a quick quip. It could be denial, lashing out in rage or anger. It could be a retaliation. A lot of times it's a retaliation, especially when it comes to going to therapy and that sort of thing. For us, persecutor alters hate therapists. They hate them because they know exactly what therapists are, and they know that therapists know how to deal with their like, you know, bullshit. So whenever we say, okay, I want you to front and talk to this person, they're like, no, I'll do this instead. And then they'll do something really harmful to the body or to part of the system or an alter, or, you know, something like that. And that shows us that they are afraid. They are genuinely afraid of confronting this person. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to repel us from doing something that they don't want us to do. So, for instance, we'll say, I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to talk about this painful subject matter. And they're like, no, you're not. Let me just flood you with these terrible memories of that exact same subject matter to the point that you don't want to talk about it because it's only going to be triggering for you. That's a kind of retaliation. Another thing is, like, once you not really overanalyze, but once you analyze what they're saying and what they're doing, how they react to everything that you're telling them, you can kind of guesstimate, like, what their goal is, what their purpose is, whether or not they're insecure in anything, what they might be insecure in. It really comes down to what their reactions are and what you say. You gotta probe them and figure out how they react to whatever it is you're saying in order to counteract whatever it is they're doing to harm your system. And for us, that involves getting somebody who doesn't take their shit to constantly be around them and make sure that they don't hurt anybody else, because obviously that's what they want to do. Okay, this was a really long video, and I'm going to stop it here because it's 25 minutes long. So, bye!